Welcome to the Awake Space. I'm Lori Rivers, astrologer, philosopher, anthropologist, and your host of the Awake Space Astrology podcast. And I, too, like to live dangerously. Right now, we're just waiting on Mercury to station retrograde, and it should do so by the time I am done with this podcast. Will we make it through the entire recording without mayhem and mishaps? Only time will tell. I'm using my humor because there's some stuff coming up, guys, and I talked about it in the last episode where you need to buckle up. But I had some questions from the patrons in Discord, and I thought, while we're waiting for the shoe to drop, why don't we look at consciousness, frequencies, and understanding how energy works and how that applies to astrology. You'll get it here only on the Awake Space Astrology podcast. Well, we didn't make it very far into this first segment before the phone rang and interrupted my recording. So, like I said, I too like to live dangerously. Oh, Mercury, you joker. Mercury can be a bit of a trickster. That energy, I tell ya. So, we've got Mercury square Pluto. That's some of the more serious stuff that's going on when we see serious accidents. Anytime our focus is not in the present, if we're not grounded, we're going to face some changes. Now, if you're accessing some of the higher level energies, there's some unpacking of the subconscious to happen, and it can be a little crunchy. Not gonna lie, a little bit crunchy. I've been going through that, a little bit crunchy. I have the Mercury on my moon, square Pluto. So Pluto is square my moon, it's opposing my sun. So of course Mercury is opposing my sun and my Mercury. And it's been a little illuminating. I came to some realizations this week. I talked about this at Coffee with Lori today. There was some stuff that came up that I was kind of aware of, but hadn't really looked at because it hadn't seemed all that important or relevant until now. Because I'm in a relationship. So relationship is up. Thank you, my moon. And I had to come to some awarenesses. And some of them are really good. They're all really good. We try to shy away from the tough stuff. And you really don't want to do that. You don't want to shy away from it. You lean into it. You accept it. You don't have to go down the rabbit hole and get stuck in it. But you can see it for what it is and go, oh man, I see you. When we hit a resistance pattern, and that's just where we feel the pain and the tension and we're resisting it, because ow, it hurts, right? Ow is a resistance pattern. But if you take a look at it, you go, I see you. I see you. There's a part of me that is so used to having that reactivity. And it's afraid that as I heal, it doesn't get to live anymore. There's a part of you that literally is afraid of not existing. Because if you get healthy, well, that part of you doesn't get to function anymore. And I've been through this a lot in my life. It's been a long, long, long healing road. It's been a long healing journey. And when you can come to that awareness and go, oh, I see you. I see you. I see you for what you are. I see you. Then you can heal. Then you can move past it. And that's a good thing. And you move through it. Because there's no around it. There's no getting away from it. You got to move through it. So that is one of the things we deal with when we're healing. And we're always healing. just life is a journey. Life is a healing journey. And this Mercury retrograde season has so much energy happening through it that I think we need to go through it again. So Mercury is square Pluto. It stations direct tonight, September 26th. It will be retrograde, not in retrograde. It will be retrograde motion tomorrow, September 27th, which means it appears to be moving backward in the sky. So we're going to cover some ground. We're going to go back over some of the ground we've been through over the last 3 weeks before it stations direct. Now, Pluto on October 6th stations direct 2 hours after the new moon, which is conjunct Mars. That's a lot of energy. There's something big happening that day. And it's a global event. Okay. On a personal level, it could be a really powerful day. I had a great reading with a client this Sunday afternoon. And this was just perfect for her career. She's really gone through a lot in the last couple of years, really reshaped and fashioned herself anew, given the Pluto transit that she was going through. And that new moon just supercharges part of her chart that she needs supercharged. So and I told her, hey, don't feel guilty when the rest of the world looks like it's falling apart, that you're doing great. And she said, oh my gosh, that confirmed my feeling. So some of you are going to be moving into your power because you're here to be of service in that time. And you can't be of service if you're falling apart. Those of you who are falling apart, guess what? You are available for people to be of service to you. We all get a turn. We all get a turn. We all get a turn in every single position. There's nothing wrong or right about where you're at. You're just where you're at. And the more you can let go of, is this bad or good, better or worse, the better off you're going to be. And so we're going to talk about frequencies. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But frequencies are important, and understanding what they are is really important, especially when you get into the high vibe crowd and understanding the difference between the reality of vibration and the myth. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. So October 6th, we have the new moon conjunct Mars. 2 hours later, when the moon and Mars are conjunct at 14 degrees, Pluto stations direct. That is a big event because the moon and Mars are square Pluto in that. That's a lot of energy. Venus ingresses into Sagittarius the next day. That's global finance, and then and political stuff, global politics, also some religious stuff up on deck. And then the next day, Saturn stations direct. That's big juju right there. Saturn stations direct. So you might have more energy. You'll be like, wow, this Mercury retrograde, I feel so hyped up. Yeah, you'll feel hyped up because Saturn's not retrograde anymore. And then the 20th, we have the full moon in Aries. And then, let's see. The 18th, before that, Mercury stations direct, and so does Jupiter. Now, that could be a really great day, but it's also a lot of energy, and we'll probably see some big events. So on a personal level, great day to manifest. On a global level, probably going to be a shit show. And probably we're dealing with logistics and supply chain and weather. Oh my, that's through that. Now, again, on the blog, on the Awake Space, or not Awake Space, on the wokeastrology.com blog, you will find Mercury retrograde blog post. It's the survival guide. Go to the description of this podcast, click that link, and go read that post, because I walk you through exactly what you need to survive this time period. The world is not ending, but man, it's going to be full of frustrations and slowdowns and accidents and weather and conflicting information and people doing spin doctoring and and politics and social uprisings. There's just going to be a whole lot of shit going on. And you can tune it out and you can just be present. You'll be okay. You'll be fine. All of you people, is it going to be okay? Yeah, of course it's going to be okay. If you make it okay. If you make it okay, it's kind of up to you. If you're reliant on other people to make everything okay for you, it's gonna suck. Okay? You cannot do anything about anybody else's reactions. You can only manage your own. Okay? You can't make anybody wake up. You can't get anybody to see the truth. And you can't get anybody to agree with your truth. The sooner you come to that realization, the less frustrated you're going to be. Okay? And I can guarantee you that based on my personal experience in life. So, it's going to be a little wild and a little wacky. Deep breaths. You got this. So, we had some questions in the Discord about consciousness and frequency, and that's what I'm going to look at next. So let's talk about vibrations and about the awakening path. And what does it have to do with astrology? Well, a whole lot if you're studying astrology, because astrology isn't just a fixed set of definitions. We have a lot of rules that are fixed, like how we calculate things and the rules around how many degrees makes an orb and how the houses are set, etc. But when it comes to interpreting the energy of the planets, what I've learned in 3 decades of being an astrologer is that there's more than a positive and a negative expression of the energy. And as I was long before an astrologer, a student of consciousness, and what it is to be human and to feel and to think as a human. What I've learned is that we can express in a multitude of consciousnesses, every single one of us. And I talk about this on my website. If you go to the blog, under the blog tab on the navigation bar, you'll see the video tab. And I talk about our consciousness. I talk about it here too. We have our instinctual consciousness. That's our survival consciousness. It's not always a negative thing. Sometimes it serves us very well. Then we have our transactional consciousness, and that's our social and cultural programming. It's where we kind of operate kind of robotically. And then we have our transcendent consciousness. Now, that's not the ultimate enlightenment. It doesn't make us Buddha. Or maybe it does, but it's where we are deliberate and we transcend our social and cultural programming, if even for a nanosecond, and make a deliberate choice in how we respond to life. All those times where we can do a knee-jerk reaction and we take a deep breath and we decide to do something differently, which has its own set of consequences. We might have to act differently because of that decision and learn new skills. I've talked about that in my healing journey, about how becoming more healthy meant I had to learn how to deal with the world differently. And that was its own journey. So when we talk about vibration, it's just a frequency. And it's really easy to talk about low vibes and high vibes, but they're just frequencies, okay? Just frequencies. Every thought that's ever been thought comes on a certain frequency. Every feeling is a frequency. It's all energy. And the more we can move away from good and bad and just come to a neutral understanding of where things are at, the more power we have to make decisions. The more power we have over how we come out of circumstances. And in the Discord, somebody was also asking, hey, as I kind of make it up in my vibrational state, as I come to higher frequencies, I'm losing people and it's lonely. And my response was, let me pull it up, it's lonely at first because we're unused to where we're at. Eventually new people show up and we grow with them for a while, and then it starts again. That loneliness is where we are unused to our new state of being. That loneliness is where we're at our new state of being, and we are unused to it because we've been trained to be in dysfunctional and unhealthy situations and then wonder what's wrong with us when we get depressed or have anxiety, to work in jobs that we don't like, to be trapped in relationships that we've long outgrown. They may have served a purpose at one time, but because we've been told you need to be with one person for the rest of your life until death do you part, that desire to move forward, and when there is someone who isn't moving forward with you and wanting to extricate from that makes you somehow wrong, and we feel guilty about it. And then once we do extricate ourselves, having to know what it's like to be on our own and independent. And that itself is a whole new ballgame. And anybody who's ever left a relationship or been left and had to face the new reality on their own for any reason, whether it was through divorce or death or just things not working out, it can be a very disturbing time because you're used to what you know, whether it's good for you or not good. And your normal doesn't mean it's healthy, right? And so getting to a healthier space is uncomfortable. And you can only go to the next best thing. Never ever judge yourself for the decisions you make. Even if they didn't seem good, they were the best you could make at the time. That beating yourself up is actually more ego than thinking you're the bee's knees. The reply was, it was very Velveteen Rabbitish. That was one of my favorite storybooks as a kid. I understood it oh so well. I was a really loving kid, a really trusting child. And that was very much taken advantage of by the adults around me. And the word love got bandied about, and it was like a hall of mirrors. And even now, when faced with real love, there is an actual fear. That's what's been up on deck for me. A real fear of feeling love. Because will it lead to abandonment? Will it lead to getting hurt? And not just emotionally hurt, but physically hurt? Will it lead to feeling like I don't exist anymore? Because that's often what it felt like. As a child, I had to check the mirror a lot. It wasn't because I was vain, it's because I was like, am I really here? Do I exist? When I was 5 years old. And so as a full-grown adult woman, well past middle age at this point, more than halfway done, I'm facing having to look at that again. We're never done. Healing is a spiral. We see it from so many different angles. And looking at this space where I do love somebody very much. And it's terrifying. It's terrifying. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm wasting my time? I don't have that much time on this planet. Even if it's 30 years, 50 years, I know how fast that time goes. Certainly worth the risk. Certainly worth the risk. I've learned that too. To love and lose. It's better than not having had it. That velveteen rabbit. So yeah, we do outgrow people sometimes. Sometimes those relationships are there for a moment, and sometimes they're there for years. And then we grow and we move forward, and there's new people that come into our lives. Just like when we start an enterprise or something, you'll think, oh, my friends and my family will have my back, and then they're busy telling you every way you can fail. And I really caution you during this Mercury retrograde, if you're planning to start your own business, and I'm not saying don't start your business during Mercury retrograde, although there's probably better times to do it, but depends on your own chart though, so don't just use generic interpretations. But if you get something started, don't talk about it to the people around you until you know you're having success. And the reason for that is everybody wants to keep you safe, and so they don't want you to take risks. And if they're not involved in funding you or taking care of you in some way, and they don't have a stake in the game, it's none of their damn business. You don't need to tell anybody anything. Find people who are doing what you do and will support that process. Because it's often the people not closest to us that give us the greatest support. That's why we go to therapists. That's why you go to readers. Because those people are neutral and don't have a stake in the game. They don't have anything to lose by you growing. And that's an important thing to remember. So frequencies, getting into a high vibe space. It's not the only space to be. There's benefit to having what they call contrast. Contrast is kind of that lower space where things are crunchy and you're facing the fear and you're facing the pain and you're in it. Well, that's creating beautiful desire. Abraham Hicks likes to say it's sending rockets off. And when you ask, it is given. You just got to get in a receiving space, which means not being resistant. But it's not a blame thing. It's not a blame thing. Sometimes there's divine timing involved. Sometimes what you want and you think you want isn't quite mature. Sometimes maybe there's something better than you've thought of. Whenever something isn't working out, it's not a failure. It's just not ripe yet or not ready yet, or there's a better way to do it. Don't sit and blame yourself. And likewise, sometimes when you're in those crunchy spaces, it's just right where you need to be to come to an awareness or clarity. The other night when I was feeling super crunchy, my heart hurt. There was abject terror flowing through me, and it made no sense. And so I laid down on my bed and I got quiet and I felt into it and I accepted it. I was like, I can accept that I am feeling pain and terror. And it all has to do with this relationship. And I know the facts. I know when I'm with this person physically and we're having lunch or running an errand, I feel 100% safe. It's only when I haven't seen them for a few days that I feel terror of being rejected and abandoned. Well, this is old stuff. This is really old stuff. And then I went back and I thought about it and I thought, this has nothing to do with the abuse that I went through. Not really. This has to do with my dad being a firefighter. And he worked 24 hours on shift and he wasn't home and he was off for 48 hours. And when Dad was home, everything was mostly okay, even though I was getting abused. I didn't know I was being abused. And when he was gone, my mother was very scared and anxious. And it was very, very much a reality and in my consciousness early that my father could die at work. And so not having someone present that I care about is terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. And there's not enough solidity in that relationship to feel okay. And I went back through my second marriage and realized that whenever my spouse went off to do some training away, everything would fall apart. Everything would fall apart. Like the house would fall apart. We'd have an emergency or there'd be a power outage or whatever. There was always something that would go on when he left. And that was a manifestation of that fear as well. And then I went back to my first marriage and I went, wow, that's a really strong pattern there where I feel that insecure because as a little kid, I knew my dad could die on the job. And I still get mad when I hear about people talking about firefighters and policemen and that it's their job to rush in and be heroes. And all I can think is, no, their job is to go home. Their job is to go home. They've got families. And there's some little kid sitting up at night praying their heart out that mommy or daddy comes home. I know, I was that little kid. And it does a number on you. And I'm sure military kids feel very much the same way. And so it was through that awareness and through that crunchy, low vibe space that I gained that clarity in a way I hadn't before, because I've had to unpack a lot of trauma in my life. It was kind of nice to know this wasn't from sexual abuse. It wasn't from the emotional abuse. It wasn't from all of that. I mean, it contributed, I'm sure, but it was really just a very simple fact that I was very aware as a child that my father could die and not come home because other daddies had. So it was very, very clear. Very funny. It's 7:21 p.m. 7:21 is my birthday. Just clarifying. So what happens when you see 7:21 or your birthday? It's just an acknowledgement of self-awareness. It's just your noticing that you are clear and aware and on point. So, vibrations. And we have a dog drinking water and a dog barking and crickets. It's getting dark and it's cool. Oh my gosh, it's actually cold. You can't get this life wrong, guys. That whole idea of doing it right and wrong is how you get controlled. It's how you get controlled. I don't care how bad you fucked up in your life. Okay? I just don't care. It wasn't the end. It didn't make you unworthy. We don't get a manual for living. It's a journey. It's an experience. It's an experiment. And you get to wake up every single day and make a new range of choices. You get to wake up every single day and start the day fresh. And with the moon in Gemini right now, and Mercury getting ready to station retrograde, it is time to look at the stories we tell. Because stories carry vibration. And if you're constantly telling yourself you're not good enough, you don't know what you're doing, if people only found out, then they wouldn't want you or like you or love you or, they'd fire you or whatever those stories are. Those are unuseful stories. They help you come to clarity if you can examine them, but they are not useful. You want to tell yourself a better story. So once I identified my dad's work and how it impacted me, I reminded myself of all the times he came home, which that presented its own problems, and that contributed too. And I had to work through those feelings. And all the time I felt safe, and when I felt safe, and how I felt safe, and how I can make myself feel safe right now. And that is what helped me just move through those blocks. And we're going to do a little exercise in the next segment to help you feel in to the blocks and release that energy in a very gentle and loving way. Oh my goodness, we have a great amount of patrons. I want to say special thanks to Tanya, Jordan, Courtney, Alexis, Catherine, Laura, Susie, Luis, Andrea, Rebecca, Christina, Scarlett, Kayla, Stacy, Kimberly, Kara, Alexandra, Jacqueline, Megan, Kim Ivy, RBF Champion, Shelley, Laura, EMPZDZ, and Tiffany Lee. Bigger shout outs go to my moderators. I've got Casey and Absolute, known as Chris, and I've got Kathy, otherwise known as Sister Luck. Another shout out to Dwabit, Ariel, Rita. Well, you guys are doing great communications. Big thanks to Peachtree. And we've got Yogi Hannah, my good friend Kirsten Soga, the wonderful chocolatier and life coach, and Katie. So big shout outs to Nancy for all the work she's doing, testing stuff in the prep thread. Medium Carrie Wilson for always doing those wonderful tarot readings and aura readings. Shane is doing some wonderful things in the Discord as well. And I'd like to give a very special shout out to Callahan for offering always some beautiful insight in the Awakening chat. Yesterday, Callahan said, "Happy Saturday, everyone. A friendly reminder that the universe does not say no. It says yes, not right now, or there's a better option." Always, always a beautiful thing to have such wonderful people. So big thanks to all of my patrons. Because of you, this podcast gets to happen. Appreciate everything you do, all of your wonderful questions, and your desire to learn and support one another in community. Okay, so one of the things you can do, and this is something I help clients do in coaching sessions, and I'll get coaching sessions back up on the website. I want you to understand that coaching sessions do not include an astrology reading. I don't need to look at your astrology to help you feel into your body and release resistance patterns, okay? That can be done without an astrological reading. I often do it in combination with the Hidden Treasures reading to help you more embody your soul and feel into that and feel into your higher self and identify those feelings in the body. So if that's something you want, you can go to the website and book a reading. And again, I'll get the coaching sessions back up. This is a modality that I have adapted from a very physical modality called body electronics. And I made it a energetical modality where there's no touching involved from other people, because there's some consequences when people don't do it right in body electronics. And that's a whole nother story. I'll tell it someday. Remind me at a coffee with Lori about how body electronics is sustained acupressure. And if somebody lets go of a point before it's resolved, it's a fun consequence not. And I had invited a friend, and that person let go of a point because it was very painful. They had resonance with it. And I had told them, and they had also been instructed by the leader of the group, not to let go under any circumstances. Whether your finger felt like it was burning or cramping, you hold on until the resolution. And if you don't, that point doesn't resolve easily. And I got stuck at a certain consciousness that was really not fun. And it took about 6 years to get out of it. And so I thought, well, let's do this differently so that the person who is experiencing the healing process is fully in charge of their healing process and merely supported by other people. And my experience in the healing communities is long. I've been around that longer than I've been an astrologer. I was introduced to alternative healing methods and energy work as a teenager back in the 80s, and I have a Virgo South Node. I came in with a lot of healing abilities and knowledge that I didn't even know where it came from, even as a little kid. You know, that's what your South Node is. It's skills you bring in from the past. But one of the dangers of healing modalities is people assuming, because they have a Reiki level, and there's a lot of misunderstandings about Reiki now. I've been a Reiki practitioner since '99, and I was trained, you don't direct the energy, you let the universe do its job. So anybody saying they can direct the energy and cure you of an ailment isn't really doing Reiki as it was originally taught. But there's this, I can heal you. Let me heal you. And there's some ego investment in that. And it is exciting to recognize that you can be a healer and be of use and help. But I love the phrase, physician, heal thyself. Work on you. Work on you before you start trying to heal other people, because you're trying to take responsibility for someone else's process. And you could say, but Lori, I don't want people to be in pain. I don't want them to have that emotional agony. And I'm going to say, is that for them or is that for you? Because if you're an empath and you want to rid the world of suffering, I'm going to argue that it's for your own comfort level. How do I know that? Because I have been there. I have been there. I wanted the world to heal so I didn't have to feel the pain of the world. But what you're actually feeling, speaking of vibrations, is your own resonance with that pain in the world. It's your own issues getting strummed like a guitar. And that's why you feel it so keenly. It isn't anything other than that. Okay? True empaths will feel a physical feeling that has nothing to do with anything they've ever experienced before. Okay? So you might feel a broken bone when you've never had a broken bone, or you might feel some emotion you've never experienced before. But if you're sitting with someone who's grieving and you're feeling their grief, you're not really feeling their grief. You're feeling the grief you've experienced because they're activating that emotional vibration in you. Okay? And there's a difference, and I think that doesn't get taught enough. you'll notice there's some older practitioners, whether it's psychic mediums, spiritual healers, astrologers, witches, who keep going on and on and on about ethics on TikTok. There's a reason for that. We don't operate without consent. We don't read people's energy without consent. I always love it when a newbie, especially if I go to metaphysical stores, some newbie says, I can read you. And I'm like, go ahead. And I open me up. All of me. All of me. And that's a lot to read. It's a lot to read. It's like an atomic blast. It's rude to do it. It's invasive. And I'll talk a little bit about patriarchy maybe in the next segment, because that has a lot to do with it. So before you go around wanting to heal people, ask yourself, why are you doing it? Is it for them or is it for you? Is it for your comfort level? Because if it's for yours, if you're really, truly honest with yourself, if it's for your comfort level, then there's some healing work you need to do on yourself. And there's no judgment in that. Okay? There's no judgment in that. So whenever I want to fix things out in the world, I know I got to take a look right inside of me. If I want to control the situation, if I want to control the circumstances, if I want things to be better because I'm going to feel better, I got to look right inside of me. Dun, dun, dun. Da, da, da. So, how do you feel into the blocks? Well, first of all, you take some deep breaths. You take inhales through the nose and you exhale through the mouth. I know, it's boring, but do it anyway. And if you have a particular feeling that's up, you want to identify it. It could be, I feel uncomfortable. I feel blah. I feel angry. I feel frustrated. And then feel into your body where that's feeling. It could be your chest. It could be your stomach. It could be your toes. It could be your forehead. Feel into it. It could be your hands, your shoulders, your neck. Where is the tension? Okay, it's a tension pattern. And then you breathe into it. So put your awareness to it. And if it's pain, if you're feeling pain, and it could be emotional pain, feel into it. And just notice it. Don't push against it. Don't try to force it to feel different. Just say, I see you. I see this pain. I feel pain. I can accept that I am feeling pain or grief or sadness, whatever the feeling is, frustration, anger. I can accept I'm feeling it right now. I can feel it right there. Now, the minute you accept that it's there, breathe in and exhale. Because when you can accept that it's there, you're no longer resisting it. You're not accepting it and acknowledging it to hang on to it. You're just saying, I see you, I see it, I see it. I'm noticing this. The power is in the noticing. Now, if you say, but I want to feel this way, then you're forcing at it and you are resisting it. No blame, but it's not going to help. So you want to breathe back into that. Accept it. And if you don't want to accept it, like, this hurts, I don't want to accept this. Then accept that you don't want to accept it. This hurts, and I can accept that I don't want to accept it. I don't like this feeling. And I can accept that I don't like this feeling. That's how you get around resisting the resistance. You deep breathe through it. and then sit with it a moment. You don't have to think about a story, just breathe into it and exhale. And pretty soon you'll notice there's a shift. Now, this takes practice, and it's often done best with a coach. And I'll get the coaching sessions back up on my website if you want me to work with you. In just a separate session without an astrology reading, because it doesn't take an astrology reading to do it. It's an amazing experience. I've had clients who come into the Hidden Treasures readings, and we do this, and it just clears through those blocks so beautifully. And I love the feedback on those, where people are able to move energy so fast. And it's a permanent change. And you're doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm just holding a neutral space for you to clear through some blocks. I just hold the energy in a non-judgmental and loving way. Just holding space. And there's a lot of power in that for you, because then you own the situation. You own what's going on. I don't own the moment. You do. The more you can own your emotional and physical space, the more you can own your agency, the harder you are to control and manipulate, and the more quality you have in your life. And quality of life is everything. And that gets better and better the more you become aware and in your own agency. Speaking of awareness, I think we're going to talk about that in the next segment, because this Mercury retrograde is going to be a lot about awareness of what is in balance and what is out of balance. And a little bit of support and encouragement from my end might help you just a little bit. So let's talk about patriarchy. I think a lot of people misunderstand what patriarchy is. Patriarchy isn't really about genders. It assumes male dominance or traditional male, what we consider traditional male behavior as the ruling structure. But women participate equally in this, whether it's condoning the idea of a masculine dominance or adopting that kind of behavior in dominance and control. And we see that a lot, especially like from second wave feminism. And that's why, even in astrology, because of the nature of the beast, we have a lot of binary and patriarchal viewpoints that get expressed in more traditional interpretation of the astrology. Now, don't cancel astrology. That would be dumb. It's a great tool. But understanding that we can change how we discuss the information and not look at things in terms of masculine and feminine energy from the social and cultural viewpoint that is dominated by, pre-Bronze Age thinking. And that goes for any culture. There are very few maternal cultures, matriarchal cultures in this world. There are some. But we're not even, in my opinion, seeking to swing back to matriarchy. It's finding a neutral space and understanding we are human. And that there are people who have capabilities regardless of however they identify or are physically composed of in the body. And it should be through capability and interest, that drives our actions. So when we are readers, healers, servers, teachers, it's important to remember that consent is important. That goes for reading energy, reading cards, telling people what you know. We saw a big brouhaha in the psychic and medium community over the Gabby Petito case because there were a lot of people giving information or claiming they had information without the consent of the loved ones involved. And just because you can doesn't mean you should. There's ethics involved. The same goes for astrology. People often ask, will I read a loved one's chart? If it is a child under the age of 16 and the reason for the reading is to better meet that child's needs, absolutely, absolutely, I will read that. Over 16, you need to get the kid's permission because it's their life path. Likewise, I don't like doing relationship readings unless both parties are present. Unless it is an adult child of a parent and you're trying to make sense of the relationship, I'm glad to do that. But if it's a romantic reading, I don't want to do it without the other party because 9 times out of 10, it's manipulative. And wanting to make that person love you. What can you do better to make them love you? And, that's just not the can of worms I like to open. So there's ethics involved. And thinking we know better than other people in their spiritual journey is a dangerous thing. When we label people as good and bad, positive and negative, even going around calling people toxic, that's pointing your fingers out there. And their behavior may not be something you like. Their belief system may not be something you like, but they might be serving a purpose that we don't yet understand. Even if it's dangerous and deadly, we don't know what the ultimate purpose is. And the divine, neither masculine nor feminine, because I think the divine masculine and feminine stuff is just another ball of patriarchy and swooping people up because it feels comfortable. It's the known. You're used to thinking in terms of masculine and feminine. You're used to thinking in terms of strong and weak and receptive and pliant and obedient and giving and nurturing and strong and protector energy. It's a bunch of bodice ripper novel mentality. The divine simply is. The divine doesn't need a gender. Humans don't even need gender necessarily, but they need different sexual parts in order to procreate, because that's how our species operates, and we're not asexual yet. We don't have asexual reproduction. We have masculine and feminine parts, and we haven't quite got it mastered to how those parts procreate. Procreation is its own thing, and it's a biological sex thing. But looks like they're working on stuff on that too, and then we're really going to have to examine things. I don't have a problem with it either way. It's just fascinating to watch it all unfold. But from a neutral space, the divine is so much bigger than gender. And we have to watch our egos. That wanting to be a helper, that wanting to be the wise one, that wanting to be the guru or teacher, that wanting to be seen as a saint and not a sinner. And then there's the flip side of that, where people use their sins and their repentance to gain recognition. That's all ego. Praying where you'll be seen. Doesn't mean it's bad to want to be seen. It's just you want to check what is your motivation. What is your motivation? What is your purpose? Knowing what that is. And again, I've done all of those things. Yeah, I've done all of those things. It's really funny to me because when I say that, I'll get some comments, mostly from fire sign placements, just saying, going, oh, I'm so glad I worked on that stuff so I don't do that. And it's so funny to me because they're trying to say, look at me, I'm being good. I used to do that too. You know, oh, I'm so glad I worked on that because I don't do that now. And it's okay to just admit without judgment, yeah, I used to do that. That's how I know this. I can own that. I don't feel ashamed of it. It's okay to own our stuff. One of the worst things you can do is if somebody has talked about a negative experience is to say, oh, gosh, that's awful. I'm so glad that never happened to me. You know, that's kind of thing. Or owning it, you know, taking on, I can feel your pain. You know, that's kind of rude too. I remember I was grieving my grandfather. He had passed, and this friend of the family had shown up to let me know because my mom and dad were at the hospital and I just got home from school, and this friend of the family told me and started sobbing all over me and grieving all over me. And my grief took a little different shape. My grandpa had suffered for 2 freaking years, and I lived in the same house, and I watched that man struggle. And I didn't feel soul-bending grief. I felt relieved. I felt like he'd been released. I felt sad because I loved him. But as this grown woman sobbed all over my 11-year-old self, I was deeply disturbed by her behavior. And it taught me an important lesson that I didn't want to do that to somebody else. Ever. To assume I knew how they felt because of how I felt about something. And so that woman served a huge role in my life as a teacher, even though it wasn't the most pleasant experience. Everybody serves a purpose. Sometimes those negative experiences or unpleasant or uncomfortable experiences teach us a lot. And our teachers aren't always nice and kind and gentle. But we can still learn from them, and we can still bless them on their journey. It's important. So when we look at patriarchy in astrology especially, be very mindful that you're not looking in the duality of things, because duality and patriarchy are directly linked. Strong, weak, masculine, feminine, good, bad, positive, negative, evolved, unevolved. It doesn't matter how you call it. If it's one thing or the other, it's a polarity. It's a duality. And I think we need to move to a more understanding space. That's why I say there's no good or bad placements. They simply are. Now, how you express those can be defined and described in a lot of different ways. Good, bad, positive, negative, strong, weak. But those are all really judgmental spaces. And judgment, or condemnation, rather, doesn't really serve us very much. it can be a way of holding ourselves back. You know, you don't really try if you don't think you're worth receiving. You don't really try if you think you're so broken, and it comes from the sinner idea. And if you came from a well-churched background, regardless of the denomination, I would urge you to remember, if that's the dogma you were raised with, that maybe, just maybe, to remember there was a price that was paid and there's a resurrection. And we live in a post-resurrection world if you come from Christian background and that theology. If you've left that thinking, think about it in terms of that was solid. There was no needing to earn anything. And you can undo that programming in your consciousness by doing awareness exercises just like the one in the last segment. Duality and patriarchy go hand in hand, and it's all about dominance and control. And we're about to enter an era where that will be not only changed, but counterproductive to what our species needs to do to survive. The more you can undo this inside of yourself, the more pleasant life will be. So just some thoughts on patriarchy. And I think that's going to end our podcast here. Don't forget, we've got the Patreon. You can join that. You can end up coming to Coffee with Lori or Living by Luna, Cosmic Surfers. And we've got the How to Prepare for the End of 2021 workshop is up and available as a recording. Feel free to grab that if you haven't already. Thank you so much for listening.